This conference will now be recorded.
Let's call a work session order at 8:05. Silence your cell phones and stand for the pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you want the mics on? You said that just turn it over. I don't turn it down. Switch up to left hand one to 8. Thank you.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Get us rolling here. We spent a good deal of time getting through I guess maybe the bulk of Article 5 and feeling good about where we've been today through the septic conversation and the back end of Article 5, which Chris will walk us through are really what other water type requirements, permitting type requirements we need to be in consideration of. It's fun. And if any other commentaries, changes the board would like to see happen with the rest of those, I guess pertinent to what we have been and haven't been doing in the historical past. I do have all of the commentary and marked up notes from the last time we chatted at the end of November, and we'll bring those up hopefully in a few moments. As our IT friends are back here able to get that everything talking to each other as it should be. So maybe Chris, if you want to at least walk through, the commissioners have seen what you emailed them, of course, the end of December in terms of notes and where you'd like to go with the conversation. Give us some summary of where that is.
Well, we are here for the 5.04, the stormwater management sediment erosion control portion of the UDC. And just throughout this portion of the UDC, things are pertinent pieces of it. They're at the back that we refer to at the beginning, and they're kind of mixed up. And so I guess I just wanted to give kind of a general overview, and first of all, state that with stormwater management and the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which is referred to as NPDES, you'll hear a few times throughout the course of this, and the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan program. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency oversees all of that. Now, it is anytime that you disturb over 1 acre of ground, you are required to get a NPDES construction stormwater permit, and a requirement to that is that a stormwater pollution prevention plan is created. That process is that when you go to get that permit, that is issued through the state. It's an online process, and you apply, submit your $400, and there's a box to check in there that says a SWIP plan has been created. SWIP plans through the pollution control system, pollution control agency, are not reviewed for every permit. They may grab samples periodically along the way and look at them, but it is just stating that one has been created for that permit. In projects from 1 to 49 acres, they do not review SWIP plans. Anything over 49 acres has a mandatory review of the SWIP plan. So how that correlates to Waseca County is that in our UDC code, we have language in there that mimics a lot of the requirements of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the SWIP plan. If you kind of summarize Waseca County's role in this. We are required to, have financial security, and this is all if we are above 1 acre, if a construction stormwater permit is required. According to our UDC, that we are supposed to have financial security, which in a single unit, single dwelling home is a minimum of $1,500. From there it goes up to a cost of $3,000 per acre. And it is $6,000 if it is in a environmentally sensitive area. Along with that, we as the county are supposed to review and approve the split plan before we issue a zoning permit. We are also, according to the UDC, required to do pre, during, and after SWIP compliance inspections throughout the building process. And at the end of the process, we are supposed to monitor, maintain, and return the financial security a year after the completion and acceptance of the project. Meaning that after that project is done, we're supposed to have a period of time where that money stays there, and a year later, then we return it. Now, all of those requirements are under UDC code, or UDC. But bear in mind that this process is overseen by Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. So us doing every one of the steps as written is kind of redundant to what the MPCA requires. MPCA does have field inspectors and staff that respond to complaints and, drive around and do inspections of sites, construction sites. And then I did visit with one of their agents, and I asked him, I said, if this is an MPCA program, what does the county statutorily have to do in this process? And he said, well, for a lack of better terms, the county does not have to do anything because it is covered through the MPCA. Anything over 1 acre, I just keep clarifying that. And so, our job today is to look at the UDC and the way that it is written, because all of the language in here says Waseca County will, Waseca County shall, Waseca County must. They're all words that describe Waseca County will do this. The challenge in it is that, we don't have staff to do all of these prerequisites of this code. Within Waseca County, there is for sure 2, maybe 3 people that actually have the certification. I have it, Jim Kohler has it, and I believe that Josh Smith, his assistant, may have portions of it. There's 3 different criteria. There is design, there is construction site supervision and inspection, and then on the lower end there is installer, for people that are actually installing the best management practices. And so, it is up to you as the board to figure out, how much of this that we want to partake in, and, depending on that level of interest, how we're going to approach that. When Michael gets the remarks and the changes up there that I submitted, a lot of the changes that I suggested instead of saying Waseca County will, it's Waseca County may, and that, reserves the right for us to be able to do it if we so choose, or if it's an environmentally sensitive area, or if we feel that we need to be involved in it. And it gives us some sort of a roadmap, when we have issues or violations that would arise, outside of compliance. Now, leading into that, right now in our zoning permits that are issued for buildings, and Shelley and Bonnie just sent it to me last week, that on the bottom of the zoning permit, it says, this zoning permit authorizes land disturbance up to 1 acre. Anything over an acre, has to have an MPCA construction stormwater permit, and so now we also need to figure out, well, we have a zoning permit that covers disturbance and earthwork, and then we also have a land alteration permit, land alteration sediment control permit, which is required of anything over 3,000 square feet at this current time. And, within both of those permits, we as a county maybe need to refine that just a little bit, because if we are in our land alteration sediment control permit, if we are putting in prerequisites and requirements for people to control temporary erosion and sediment control on a project of 3,000 square feet, we also should be covering that base if we're giving them a zoning permit, which covers them up to 1 acre. Not just giving them a zoning permit to build a house and a shed and a driveway and say, here you're covered. A lot of our adjoining counties they have kind of a checklist, and that's a site plan with kind of a topographic map on it, which identifies where the water leaves the site, and where some problematic areas could rise. And it also will, lay out that in this area down, on the downhill side of, the area you're working, we need to have silt fence, or we need to have.
On that 3,000 square feet or more, how did you land on the 6,000?
Well, on the way I landed on the 6,000 is, it's an educated guess, for a lack of better term. I view it as a person putting in a septic system. We put in, quite a few septics throughout the course of the summer, and, an average septic system probably disturbs 5,000 to 6,000.
With a drain field.
With a drain field,
Right,
on the tank
okay.
site.
That was kind of.
If you build a 40 by 60 pole shed, and you got 2,400 square feet in that, and you mess up 20 feet around it and build a driveway, it's a suggestion, and it is at the wishes of the board, that whether that be 6,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, that number can be what you make it. Blue Earth County is 5,000 square feet. So it's just, I don't want to say throwing darts at a dartboard, but.
Do you know what Steele is at by chance, or any of the other surrounding counties? It's just, now you have people that own land in multiple counties, and it would be nice to be somewhat on the same page, where they wouldn't have to say, oh, Waseca's 6 and Blue Earth is 5, and Lee Sewer's 4.
Currently, I do not know what Steele County is. I've not taken the time to visit with them on what their minimum requirement is for land use, for a land alteration permit. And I don't recall off the top of my head what Rice County was.
Yeah. And it's not, everyone's gonna need to check their local laws in that county anyway. So many variations are never.
Well, and I mean, the other thing is that the variations and requirements of what their land use permit actually entails compared to what Seahill or Steel or Rice, they vary greatly. You know, I mean, you know, whether they're running off of, you know, a copy of the UDC program, like Blue Earth counties, I don't exactly recall what they are using, but it seems to be in a bit of a different format compared to the CUDC. So there are going to be disparities between counties, so it's just kind of what we feel would work for us as Waseca County. So, you know, there are things that we can do on the level, you know, working with planning and zoning to, you know, say, you know, this is what other counties are doing. When we issue a zoning permit, we should at least, at a minimum, you know, have this information tied to it, or kind of make it kind of an amendment or an addendum to the zoning permit to say that, you know, when you're gonna build your single family dwelling and your shed and your garage, you know, you need to have consideration of where your runoff is going and the erosion control aspect of it, you know, because it seems a bit, I would say fruitless that, or pointless that we're having concern on a 3,000 square foot land alteration sediment control permit. But with the general zoning permit, we're not worrying about the other 40,000 square feet on the project. So, and it's easy, something that's easily done, you know, we can just add a page to the zoning permit, to the land alteration permit actually, you know, needs to have a little bit more to it as well to cover the bases of erosion control. But it's more or less just kind of a checkbox that we should, you know, give to the constituents to make sure that they're at least aware of what they should be doing, so that they don't get the surprise inspection from the pollution control agency and have problems arise out of that inspection. That's what Chris is finishing that up. You guys have some,
Well, the 6,000. So we're gonna make it, you're trying to make it simpler to tie in with the other.
well, I mean, my train of thought in increasing the square footage of the requirement of a land alteration permit is that we're not having to do land alteration permits for very trivial municipal sites. I mean, we also will reserve the right if a project is in an environmentally sensitive area on the edge of a wetland or on the edge of a public water, on the edge of a lake, that we still would be able to exercise our right. You know, you need this land alteration permit, erosion sediment control, and these are the requirements of it, that you have some best management practices here or there. But, you know, I guess from my viewpoint is that I'm saying that if we actually truly start enforcing things, you guys drive around the country, how many land disturbances do you see in a year that are over 3,000 square feet that planning and zoning or Waseca County in general has no idea of what's happening? You know, most people don't, you know, they don't understand what the rule is, I guess, first, or they're uninformed of what the requirements of the county are at this point. People don't necessarily think, well, I'm going to move some dirt. My first call should be to planning and zoning to ask them, you know, if I can put in a field driveway and any road ditch, does planning and zoning oversee that, or is it the highway department, or is it the township, or, who do we go to? So most people just do it,
The one I think about is the one that's east of Waldorf.
Yeah.
That got done. And, if they would have came in before they started that whole project, what would the steps be that they would have went through by, if this was all implemented at that point in time?
Well, you're
Because that's
asking,
over, that's
you're
over
asking
3,000.
pre-change, or, are you asking? what
Before
would-
they even started the project.
Right, I mean,
And we had this implemented already.
this has been implemented since
Well-
2009.
We haven't done anything.
The steps would have been is that, according to the UDC, that we would have required a copy of the SWIP plan, and we would have reviewed it. And at that point in time, before they received their zoning permit, they would have had all of their checklist items done. Do you have the NPDES permit? Do you have the SWIP plan, which Waseca County has reviewed and approved? So it's not to say that they still would not be subject to inspection, criticism, or violation from MPCA. If MPCA would, have made a site visit and found things that were, not done according to the plan, but, the idea behind this is that we have to do not a better job, but we have to make people cognizant or aware when they're getting a zoning permit that if you are going to disturb more than an acre of ground, these are the steps that you need to take, and we are explaining this to you to keep you out of the view of the MPCA or subject to their inspections. Or at least if the pollution control agency shows up there that, at a bare minimum, you have the required NPDES permit and the SWIP plan. So, you kind of pass go, and whatever happens after that point is, kind of a combination of if you're following your SWIP plan and if you're doing a good job on housekeeping your site.
That, I believe I know what you're talking about, east of Waldorf. But how much of that was actually required of us? Let's say we don't have this, that we're supposed to be following. If it's in our UDC, we should be trying to follow it. But how much is actually mandatory in that instance by us?
Well, if we were following UDC to the letter,
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about UDC. I want to talk about what's statutorily mandated by the state for us to do.
well, what was mandated there is that, that owner had to go and get an NPDES construction stormwater permit, which would require SWIP. That at a minimum is required by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Right, so all that needed to be implemented by the MPCA, not us.
That is correct. At this point, planning and zoning has been doing a good job of telling people when they're getting a zoning permit, if it is over an acre, you need to do this. Whether the people actually follow through and do it or not is yet to be seen, and obviously in that circumstance, they didn't do it. And that's where the problems arise. Now, according to the UDC code, as Waseca County, when they came in to get their zoning permit, they would not have even got their zoning permit until Waseca County had a copy of the NPDES permit and a copy of the SWIP plan that Waseca County actually spelled out as Waseca County Highway Engineer would have reviewed the SWIP plan and approved the SWIP so that planning and zoning could issue the zoning permit for the building.
To build off your question, it seems to me in this instance, the staff has done a pretty good job of clarifying what is the county responsibility and what is not the county responsibility as far as what permits we really have to keep track of or issue or not issue. I think there's we want to make sure that we have staff and resources so that Waseca County residents can do what they are legally entitled to do with a minimum of interference on their own property. We want to make sure that we are doing what we have to do as a county to oversee those processes. We don't want to do more overseeing than we have to, because that takes more resources. But the other thing that we have to do that depends on the cooperation of the public is we also must help them make that connection between, okay, this is what you have to do for Waseca County, this is what you have to do for the state. And that helping our residents, and this is something that we have to make sure we have the resources and the staff to do, that process to help the public understand that this is really a two-step process. There are certain things that we're going to ask of you because we're the county and you live here and you own property in our county. But the state has requirements above and beyond this. And we are going to help you with this checklist or these papers or whatever. And I know we already do some of this, but this is rethinking not just what our UDC says, but also our processes within our offices so that as we're helping people, that's very, very clear. If I asked kids to do a book report and I said, you're going to turn in a written book report and then you're also going to do this oral report, every kid knew there was two things that had to happen by the time it was done, and you have to put presentation and material together so that is very clear. And you don't want to make it harder than it needs to be. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the work here, Chris, is one of the things that I think has made this difficult so far is because our code is what it is. There's not a clear delineation between this is the county's responsibility and this is the state's responsibility. And I think if we can clarify that line a little better for our residents, that will help us.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, the biggest thing, and it pertains to all of the UDC, but, this portion of it in general is that, we just have to educate to make these people get to the MPC, to get the required permits so that they don't wind up in, monetary buying because of it, because the fines that do come out of a lot of the stormwater NPDES out of this program, the fines are no joke. I mean, they're big. When I sat through the training, they had a slideshow of, citations that have been given throughout the years, and, they range anywhere from 10,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 fines are fairly common, and so the last thing that, we as Waseca County want to see is someone who's building a grain bin site within, a certain relationship to a wetland does not have the pollution control agency come in and issue hefty citations, and the person said, well, I didn't know that I had to do this, that there was a NPDES permit that was even required. And that's, that's a catch-22 because people do not want to go through that process to begin with through the MPCA. It's another hindrance and it's another step in the process. But on the other hand, we also have a obligation to those people to make them aware to say, if you're going to skip that process, you're going to be cognizant that you're doing it, and it's not Waseca County that you're answering to, it's Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. But the changes to the UDC are just saying, for lack of better terms, is it's governed by the MPCA already. It's kind of on autopilot. They're handling the permitting, they're handling the inspections. What we have written in our UDC is redundant to their language, just saying that Waseca County is also going to do the same job. And so I guess in my eyes, we don't need to do that. That's my opinion, but.
Michael, can you scroll back away to 3? Right there. On the open channel or other open channel, we have you guys with pull behind earth movers. Is that where you're trying to take that out of the equation? I mean, you can move a lot of dirt, and when it's visible, everybody questions it.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they say other open channel, my mind goes more towards a proper drainage ditch, an open channel drainage ditch. And through the PCA right now for maintenance of a drainage ditch, there is the minimum criteria to get an NPDES permit is different. You're allowed up to 5 acres of disturbance doing routine maintenance of a drainage ditch compared to the 1 acre of regular land alteration for anywhere else. And so I struck it, with the idea that, what does other open channel mean? I mean, grass swale, I guess, would probably be more pertinent to what you're talking about in terms of waterways within a field. The other, they have a definition in there of normal farming practice, which is, tilling, planting, harvesting. It's not necessarily so much about moving dirt within a field, there's a lot of gray area in that. I mean, as field tiling and installing a conduit for a length of 300 feet or more in a field, considered outside of normal farming practice, according to this, technically, yes, but I'm not after us chasing around people that are landscaping in the middle of a field. It is one thing if you were trying to do it outside of the field to convey the water away from the site through a non-cropped area or something like that. But, when you're doing minor landscape features within a field itself, as long as you're not impacting wetlands or things of that nature, I myself am not as concerned about that.
Question? So, looking at the second point, I think point number 2, I think you suggested that we kind of take it out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, I think we have to kind of like look at, this part of it in relation to another part of our code, where we have a requirements for mining, excavation, and a combination. So sometimes we use this part of the code for that part of it. So if we take that whole section out, it means that we have to add it somewhere else.
Sure.
And then regarding us having to do like in terms of volume and all of that, when somebody comes in for like a simple mining permit, they don't go through our CDP process. It's just us issuing them a land alteration permit to tell them they can do that. So if we kind of like change the square footage here or the volume here, or kind of look at just 1 acre, it means that we are not, we're basically leaving some part of our permitting process out. Like, I think we did that for Lake, right? Where you had like that concrete pad or concrete patio or something on in front of his house. In our UDC terms, we would have, he only needed a land alteration permit. He didn't even need a land alteration permit because if you look at the volume of that he was moving and the square footage and acreage and all that, he didn't need that. But sometimes when somebody brings in like a site plan and I'm gonna excavate the section of it, it's less than 1 acre, so they don't need a land alteration permit. But then if you look at the volume of dirt they are removing, they might have to get a permit for that. So it's kind of like an interrelationship between a section of our code and another section of our code. So if we take this whole section out, if somebody comes in for a gravel permit or an excavation permit, we don't have a part of our code to refer back to for enforcement purposes. I don't know if you get it.
So you're saying if you didn't, if it was less than an acre and they didn't need or less than the square footage for a land altercation permit, but yet you would look at, are they moving so many cubic feet?
So our definition for mining is if you're removing 500 cubic feet, then you have to go through a whole CEP process for mining, excavation, all of that. If it's below that 500 cubic feet, there's no permitting process involved. But then it might.
It says 400.
Yep. So then it might now if the NPCA, if they kind of like go through excavation and everything, and then NPCA goes on site and they're doing the enforcement and checks, they don't have a permit for that. So what's the enforcement here? It means that anybody at all can basically go and then just dig, excavate, and then they don't go through a CEP process. So what we do is, if it's 500 cubic feet or more, you go through a conditional use permit. If it's less than that, we only issue a land alteration permit because of the volume of dirt they're removing, not because of just the square footage or like 1 acre. That's kind of like what we do. That way we know that this person had the permission to do what they're doing, just in case somebody comes in and then has a complaint. We know that we kind of like went through our checks and balances before the person could do that. That's kind of like what we do.
So is the issue here, because I think we're comparing apples and oranges. When we're talking about, which often happens in planning and zoning, when we're talking about mining, that alteration is done with a different purpose and in a different way, quite often, than if we're talking about the agricultural practices that we're looking at on the other side here. Because there's which those of us that farm, it's like, you brought up mining and I went, we do that here? But I know we do, I know we do. we have the mining aspect, we have the agricultural aspect, we have the building things, houses, grain bins, those kinds of things. Those different functions, we're trying to put common language around all of them. I still think it comes down to, what do we have to do? What is required by the state that we need to make sure our residents understand that is a state requirement? And then what do we need in place in those different areas that give us the regulatory authority we need to make sure that people are not laying waste to even their own property. Sometimes, as you often know, we end up protecting people from themselves because they just don't understand. They use farmer logic, they look at it and go, oh, this will be easy. Whew. We've all had those projects.
And the reason why, I suggested that is because in terms of the MPCA and NPDES and SWIP, there is nothing in there that correlate. They're worried about square footage, they're worried about acres. They're not necessarily worried about cubic yards of earth. If you can fit 500 cubic yards of earth within 3,000 square feet, they don't care. They care about the 3,000 square feet. They care about the acre. They don't care how much dirt is being moved within it. They care about the footprint of the disturbance. And so my personal opinion is, I don't necessarily, it doesn't bother me one way or another if that something stays in there, but if I'm a homeowner and I'm trying to build a shed pad and, let's say 3,000 square foot shed pad, and it's going to take more than 400 cubic yards of dirt, I will say, in my eyes, it doesn't matter. If I can stay within my 3,000 square feet or under 3,000 square feet, I don't care if it takes 700 yards of dirt. Why do I have to get a special permit because I'm staying within the boundaries of the square footage, whether it takes 200 cubic yards of dirt or 800 cubic yards of dirt? That is my thought process behind it, and I'm indifferent to it, but from a construction standpoint, in terms of mining, and, I have some experience in that, any commercial mining, is going to be well above and beyond, 3,000 square feet. I mean, you're talking 50 feet by 60 feet by 4.5 feet deep. You're in a commercial mining world, you're not going to get much out of an area of that size. In a commercial mining application, sand and gravel, you're talking acres, not fractions of an acre. I'm not saying that it does not have relevance to something else within the code, but my concern is we're talking about worrying about 400 cubic yards of material. I think that we should be focused more on the difference between 3,000 square feet in a land alteration sediment control permit and the other 40,000 square feet of a general zoning permit. Those are from an erosion sediment control standpoint, those are the disparities that I probably feel are bigger issues than the amount of dirt within an area. But that is the decision of the board and you guys. It doesn't hurt anything to leave it there, but it's just a pecking point for someone that they come back and question the amount of fill or excavation within a 3 or a 6,000 square foot area.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was getting at too, was why you would have to, if the 3,000 square feet didn't apply, then why wouldn't it just stop there and no permit necessary? Versus needing to then go see if they're moving too much dirt. And it's almost seems like if I was somebody coming in, I would say, well, you didn't get me here, now you're gonna try to get me here with a permit, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, you know, that's a lot of what we're doing, you know, I don't know if we're truly verifying the amount of fill that is going into the site. I mean, are we physically going out and surveying a piece of property and saying the existing elevation is X, you're going to bring it to this? We're going to do the calculations to make sure that you're within reason of what you're going to report, you know what I mean? So, you know, what we're doing right now is at a glance taking everyone's word to say, how much dirt are you gonna use to build up that patio pad? And if they say it's going to be 399 cubic yards, you know, do we take it at that, or do we make them prove it, or what is our process for that? So it's, I do understand the relevance to other parts of the code, and I understand where it can disrupt something in that, or something else would be needed to add to it. In terms of mining, and maybe, you know, we're past that already, aren't we, in the UDC, the mining, or no? I mean, maybe that gets revisited at that point in time, and the thresholds for within mining or land use are updated at that point in time, because mining, you know, in my mind is, you know, well above and beyond 3,000 square feet or 400 cubic yards of material.
Does it define mining?
In the UDC, yeah. It was just an example, it was just one that came to mind. And I know that we just recently did like kind of ground CUP where we require them to have an NPDES permit. So sometimes it's better if the person gets a permit and not use it than not get a permit and now we're like, oh, you needed these kind of permits, and then I was like, after the fact. And then some regulations would be like double the fee or kind of like other stuff comes to play. So I would say that sometimes it's like in the other section where we're like, you needed a swift plan to get permit before we issue a zoning permit. We don't issue the NPDES permit, the state does. But then if we require that, it kind of like pushes the person to get the permit before they get their building permit. That way they're not saying that, well, Waseca County gave me my building permit and they told me to get an NPDES permit, but I didn't get it. But then how come they knew I was supposed to get all of these kind of permits and they issued my zoning permit? So kind of like, it's kind of like helping them, kind of like save them some trouble in the future. So it's kind of like, we don't really issue NPDES permit. You just basically give us a copy of the permit basically that says that I have the permit, and then we can issue your zoning permit. It's not like we're gonna go through all of these steps, all of these requirements to see if you have all of these checklists in place. It's just so that they think about it and do the right thing before 2 years down the line, they're like, you didn't do that. That's kind of like why we have some of the requirements in our code. Just like checklist basically for people to remember. And then if we tell somebody you need these kind of permits, where in your regulation says that you need these kind of permits? Because we don't have the state regulations in any of our books. So why are you telling me I need all of these permits and then you don't have it anywhere? Like, that's kind of like how I think about some of the languages we have in our code, just so that we have something or some way, we have the language somewhere to prove to one person that this is why we do that, or this is why we are requiring you to do it, and not because we are just making your life difficult.
Right. Up till now, has planning and zoning actually done, when an NPDES is technically required, have they been issuing, and have you guys done keeping a copy of those NPDES permits?
The only times that I've actually required or looked at it is if it's a commercial project. Like if Conagra is doing something that they need an NTC permit, they would give us a copy of that to make sure that they do have it. That's kind of like the only times that I have kind of been like, give me a copy of it, if it's like a commercial project. Because believe me, I've had a call from, there was a project that was going on and the person was gonna impact their neighbor, and then they just wanted to bypass their neighbor and do whatever they wanted to do. And I'm like, it's an adverse effect on your neighbor's property, so talk to your neighbor. And then it ended up being like a 30-minute conversation with screaming, why do I have to care about what I'm doing would impact my neighbor's property? Show me in your code what that adverse effect looks like. So it's
And some
it's
of
not
the
protecting
changes.
just that person, it's protecting another person too. But if I don't have it in my code, I can just basically tell you can just do whatever you want to do, but you're
And what I'm
licensing
trying,
the other person.
what I'm trying to get at with a lot of these changes in here is that Waseca County still reserves the right to exercise that we would require an NPDES. I mean, in this UDC code, it states that, we can require an NPDES permit on sites less than an acre if Waseca County deems it an environmentally sensitive area. And so, there is no certain threshold saying that, it just, right now it says that we shall and we do require the NPDES on sites of over an acre. And it also says that Waseca County will review the SWIP plan for compliance and not issue the zoning permit until someone from Waseca County has reviewed and approved the SWIP plan, and also do pre, during, and post-site inspections of the site and secure financial security for that site. So I mean, in the current UDC, those are all things that we are supposed to be doing before we give a zoning permit, if we follow the UDC as written.
Michael, can you, make that not as large so we can see Kristen's comments on there? Let's go down through your changes and what you have written in this, and we'll flag the ones that we think are gonna be, like we talked about that 400 cubic feet, so let's try and get down through the changes that you stated, and we'll flag the ones that are gonna need some more work.
Yeah.
Or figure out what we're going to do with them. And so you had stated you're gonna replace with May. The 6,000 square feet. We don't know yet if we want to completely strike 2 altogether.
Was there anything above that 5.4? Go to 5.04 and work our way down.
Yep, there it is.
I don't think there was much ahead of that.
No.
So that's the beginning of
That's
it.
the beginning.
And, the opening A is, I just thought that we should the first sentence under A, just states that best management practices encourage stormwater pollution prevention plan required. My note was BMP is encouraged and stormwater pollution plan may be required. Instead of us requiring it, it may be required.
After a review.
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, you're keeping that in there, it's just.
It's not striking the whole sentence then.
Right. So this is saying, and the reason for that is because if it is over an acre, it is technically required by MPCA. But we may require it if it's on a site less than an acre that we deem environmentally sensitive. Or if Waseca County, decides that it wants to partake in that process.
So is this going to be looked at first by Land and Water Resources or by planning and zoning when the person would come in?
It would start and originate out of planning and zoning because they're issuing all the zoning
Right.
permits and, if they have questions, we would be more than happy to work with them to say, yes, this is over an acre. At a minimum, they should get the NPDS or, this site. And they do a great job of saying they're on the edge of a wetland or there's a wetland on the property. You guys identify all that. And, it is a planning and zoning process that
Right.
Land and Water would be happy to help with if need be.
Kind of what I'm getting back to. I know Mommy's been gone, but welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I don't want to be spinning our wheels here if there's going to be some not contamination, if you will, but if Mommy hasn't had a chance to look at all this and we're kind of sitting here spinning our wheels going, well, now we're stuck on this one or now we're stuck on this one. So is this something that we're going to look down the right side of the changes that you've, stated and have Mommy say, is that okay? And then you guys get together and bring it back before us. Am I out of line on saying that? Should work.
No, and I think that's still fair to say 4 Articles 1 through 4 at this point. Still everything will be consolidated as a red line document. We'll still go through it again and say, okay, well, we talked about this one 4 months ago. What did we mean? And is this what we actually meant? Not how we codify that in language.
Right. And I still think it's better that if 2 or 3 people are involved in it than 7.
Well, part of,
Go ahead.
I think, and I do agree that staff needs to spend a little more time hashing this out. I think in my mind, one of the major questions will be, are there any concerns from planning and zoning staff as you consider this as a whole about moving to the may language instead of the shall language? For me, as a commissioner, I really have a problem saying we're going to do something and then we don't do it. I have a hard time with that. And I don't want us to be doing things we don't have to do if we don't have to do them. And so I think it's very important that issue in those different contexts that we have our experts looking at that and saying, yep, that's either going to be a problem or it's not going to be a problem. From the land and water management side, it makes all the sense in the world to move those to May. I want to make sure that on the planning and zoning side, that makes sense. The rest of it too, as far as what might be able to be eliminated, you guys have to make sure that it can be, or that it can be moved to another section where it makes sense, so that, because we need to not take teeth out of this, so that, because staff has to have enough enforcement power to do what they have to do. And so philosophically, those are my concerns about this, but I absolutely agree, Chair, that those are the things I want philosophically out of this.
I mean, Chris, obviously you looked through this in depth. I mean, that's why you have these changes, and I know that Mommy's looked through these things in depth, but I really think that we're spinning our wheels here when you guys aren't on the same page yet.
Well, I guess part of this is to get it in front of you and explain, and get a sense of direction from the board to say, this is what MPC requires, this is what their duties are. And, the duties of most of this pertaining to construction stormwater are dictated through MPCA. And so does Waseca County want to repeat the process at a county level to a T, as our UDC states? Or do we let them do their job and we have the ability to step in here to say, we don't like the site that's on the edge of a swamp that's going to have adverse impacts, so we reserve the right to step in and require something. My hesitation in, saying, shall or we don't is that, if we don't partake in it and allow MPCA to do everything wholly, then we have no recourse if we have a site that we're concerned with that we want to slip in.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's a shall or won't situation, and I don't want to be indecisive, but you have an agency that is technically in charge of most of this, anything over an acre. And so if we're going to partake in it the way that it's written, we have a lot more work to do as Waseca County. We have to review the SWIP plans, we have to do the inspections, we have to do the financial security. So if we are going to follow it as written, there's a lot more involvement on our behalf that needs to happen. And so the idea behind this is to get a feeling of the board to explain to you that these are the duties of the MPCA. It is being handled at their level. Do you want us as staff to reinvent the wheel?
No.
Or do you want
Was
us?
that a resounding no?
It's a no.
We don't, case by case, we may have more restrictions.
That's the word. May.
That's the word you want to use. We may, case by case, but we don't want any more restrictions than what we're required to have. But we may look at something case by case.
And I think that is clearly, as I look at this, the intent that, or the perspective that Chris is coming from. He's not in any way trying to add additional layers of bureaucracy. He's trying to identify what they are and what we should be doing. I get where that's going.
But as we've talked about this, you have three people that are very deeply entrenched in it. To bring it to us needs to be refined. Otherwise, we're not, you're bringing the recommendation. It's not like we're going to have an aha moment up here and say, oh, this is the way it should be done, because we're not. I'm sorry, we are not.
Sure.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Maybe our best bet at this point is to say, does staff have any other questions philosophically for us about the direction this ought to go? Because obviously we're not making these decisions today. This is a work in progress. Do you have any other questions for us at this point about how we'd like to see this continue to develop?
I guess at this point in time, I kind of have the answer that I was looking for is that.
The no.
No, yeah, and I just, I wanted to know if the board says, well, this is in the UDC and this is what we should be doing and adhering to, it's not fair for me to make that assumption, and make recommendations based upon not knowing what your wishes are. Now, I guess we're at the point that I can sit down with Mommy and Shelley and we can go through the details to say, well, striking this comment may cause anxiety over here or a problem over here. And, it's in fairness, Mommy returned not too long ago, so now we have that chance to, to go through some of that conversation here and then we can try and come back with something to say, this is what planning and zoning needs to happen. The biggest thing that I wanted to have an understanding of is so that everyone understands, according to our current UDC, what we are supposed to be doing that we have not been doing. Because the things that we are supposed to be doing are burdensome to staff time and heavily involved. And it is confusing, and in a program like this, if you partake in it, it's hard to, if you are a SWIP designer or inspector, it is a very thorough process and there is not a lot of room for interpretation. When you create a SWIP plan, that plan says that it shall be this way, you shall do this. And so, if a SWIP designer on the county level receives a SWIP plan from a contractor, and we look through it and say, I need more than something on a bar napkin, and we let them go with it, that's putting us in jeopardy as well.
That's a good one.
That's what
I
CBP
think
is doing, so.
the two key words are no and may.
Sure.
That came out of the meeting. And then I look at this like feedlots. You have your county feedlots, and then once they go to state, it's all covered by the state. The county has a little bit to do with it, but they know how much to go back and forth and how things even move together there. So I think there's a real difference. I look at that aspect of it.
Well, I'm sorry.
So,
Oh, sorry.
I have actually gone through this. I went through that yesterday too, just to make sure that I understand what you're doing. And I basically clicked on the internet to check everything, just so for my knowledge too. For the most part, I agree with what she's saying about striking out some things and adding some things to it. The only part that I'm struggling with is just the part where I pointed out. So if you look at where we require like a SWIFT plan, and replacing the shall with the may, I'm kind of struggling with, in the sense that maybe I'm reading it wrong, maybe I'm reading the sentence wrong, but it's saying that we shall require the SWIFT plan if it's like a subdivision plan, if it's like a proposal that exceeds 1 acre of land disturbance, and if it's like road construction, all of that. So those are like the points that we would require, or the state would require a SWIFT plan. So replacing the shall with the may, kind of like I'm struggling with, because it's already required anyways by NPCA that if you're disturbing an acre or more, you need a SWIFT plan or you need an NPDES plan or permit. So replacing it with a may, it's kind of like, I don't know how would implement that, because like for a subdivision, even though most of the parcels may not be developed all together, they do the lot lines, and then maybe 1 year, one parcel, they put a house on one parcel, 1 year they put a house on another parcel. But for the project as a whole, it would impact an acre or more. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, they need an NPCA, permit from NPCA. So it's just basically saying that if you're doing a subdivision plat, you need permission from the NPCA to do all of that stuff. That's kind of like how I'm reading that section. So that's why I'm struggling with crossing out or replacing the shall with an A. I don't know if you get it. It's just this part of it that I'm struggling with because of how I'm reading the sentences and how I'm interpreting it.
Well, it is a shall at the state level, at the state level to get an NPDES permit, it is a requirement that a SWIP plan has been drafted or made. And so when you get the permit through the website, there's a box that says, yes, a SWIP plan has been drafted or created for this. And you don't have to submit it to them, but it just states that you as the contractor have it. And if they come out and do a site inspection and they come out and say, Chris Howard, we're here to do a site inspection, we need to see a copy of your SWIP plan. And I say, I don't have one. They say, well, you informed us when you got your permit that you have one. We want to see it. Now, the requirement is there at the state level. So in order for them to get their NPDES, they're supposed to have a SWIP. And so that is covering the statutory requirements, is that it is all done at the state level. Now, at the county level, we can say we shall be required, or a SWIP plan will be required. We're not issuing the NPDES, so we're not also approving the SWIP plan. The SWIP plan is supposed to have been submitted or on file for the Pollution Control Agency. If we require the SWIP plan and we go along with the current UDC language, that also means that in Waseca County, we have to review the SWIP plan and approve it before we give them the zoning permit. So we are technically reviewing and approving the SWIP plan.
Is this the difference between knowing there's one out there and saying, oh yeah, we looked it over and it's an A+? I think it's a level of involvement here.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do a rough draft? You told me you did. Oh, I have a copy of it. I think this comes down to staff deciding and coming back mutually with some recommendations about this is what the county really needs to see to do our due diligence and not have our nose in it further than we have to, because it's really a state process. So if it's a matter of on our zoning permit, there's a box that says SWIP plan done and we check it, do we have to keep a copy of that? And just having a copy, is that enough? Or do we have to actually review it and say, yep, it's a good SWIP plan? I think that's for the experts to sort out and come back with some recommendations for us.
Well, we definitely go back and sit down and kind of go through this a little bit more and make sure that we're all in agreement on our.
Because under that same administrative logic, it wouldn't make sense to me where we have the ability, as it says there, to exempt anything per this ordinance as it pertains to that sort of process, if it's not really our process. So I'm guessing some of this is just the prescriptive language from the state that we're modeling, right? And we just have to determine if that is the most appropriate for us from the county perspective, not the state perspective. So we'll figure that part out. Anything else on this piece, Mr. Chair, right away, or is it good enough to send back to staff for some further review? Yeah. Sorry, Greg, we didn't get back to 502.
Well,
Actually, while I'm thinking about it though, I know this, I think I have this. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Oh, there was this one, that's wrong one, acronym that Kim had, and none of us could figure out what it was.
I'm trying with this.
PPGW.
Fails to protect groundwater.
Fail to protect groundwater. Mystery solved. Right.
Nice. We had all sorts of them in there. Close to that.
I Googled that.
Good for something.
That's the only reason we invited you. No, thank you very much. I did email this marked up version to you, but Greg, you just peruse some of the notes, the comments I added throughout as we had that work session as well too, if you have any even, different conclusions than Kim would have reported, that's obviously still plenty of time. Thank you. Can I take 2 minutes of your time?
Yes,
Still?
sure.
Yes, I got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's way more there than you need. There's way more there.
So I was hoping
Hey,
to.
how are you? Good. Well, congratulations on being a host baby. Okay, sounds good.
So we wanted to get this added, I talked to the chair about this morning to the city of Waseca's thinking. The county attorney has reviewed this in detail, given all of their comments, city attorney has reviewed it, they've gone back and forth, this is the finalized version of all of their blessings associated. Very simple agreement, but this is something I've discussed with you before already, and then this is just the product of that. And I'm hoping to add this to the agenda this morning. The chair being okay with that, he said he was. So ultimately, this is just a simple agreement that allows us to partner with the city, Waseca's EDA for purpose function for different projects we would like to designate. So I do have a separate fee schedule as well. That part isn't in here because it changes with the wage scale as well too, as it pertains to the city. Mr. Sonnenberg did send me a separate schedule with what those reimbursable fees would be for Tina's time in this instance for any project that she was assigned to. So it would be case by case basis. It's not committing to any cost threshold in any given year. It's literally as needed. Gives us the ability to assign Tina to whatever county program function range process we want her to chase as needed.
Do you want to roll that into action item E?
Yes. So I'll ask for that recommendation at the site meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, anyone else have anything? Work session done 9:23. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting. It's 9:30. Please silence your cell phones and stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to have Mr. Jim Kohler stand up and say a few words.
Had to write it down, I'll let it come over, okay? 1 week ago today, we lost Brian Summers in a tragic accident. I only knew Brian a few short months, but in that time, it was apparent that he really enjoyed working at the company. He immediately fit into the team, and even on his first day, I would have thought he had worked here for many years. I heard many stories this past week from his coworkers, friends, and family that his passion was farming and working on his family's dairy farm. He was devastated when his family sold the cows, and he searched for another passion, and I believe he found it when he came on as part of the crew last July. He brought happiness and enthusiasm to work every day. He was proud to earn a CDL here, drive a snowplow, and even take over Mark Hargis' route, who was a very close family friend to the Summers family. His brother Matt affirmed that Brian's search was over, telling us that he got his brother back after he started at the county. I only wish that Brian could have had more time here and on this earth. He will be deeply missed and never forgotten. My deepest condolences to Kirsten, his 4 young children, the Summers family, his county family, and this community that you're so deeply committed to. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. We'll have a moment of silence. Okay. Well said, Jim. Thank you. We're going to have introduction of new staff now.
Good morning, Judy Hewitt, Waseca County IT, and I'd like to introduce Michael Malone, our new infrastructure and security coordinator. And we're excited and happy and elated to have help. So.
Thank you. You want to say a few words? Or?
Just happy to be here.
Give us some background. Or?
I'm native to Colorado, and that's where I came from. Lived in Waseca for almost 5 years now, and still not getting used to the cold. It's still very cold.
You never will.
Other than that, glad here to be at Waseca.
That's excellent. Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Is anyone here for public comment? Public comment? Public comment? No one's here for anyone online? No, sir. Not for public comment. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Commissioner Krause, do you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chair.
Rachel?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Not even. Commissioner Christopherson?
No, sir.
Commissioner Walter?
Chair.
Michael?
Yes, sir, thank you. For your consideration, I would, if the board is so willing, add to action item E, the agreement that you have in front of you that we just discussed briefly at the end of the work session. The county attorney's office has been able to review this document as well too, and I think our staff for her comments, as well as the city, and this is the agreed upon draft. This is not a new conversation. This is the agreement essentially that partners the county of Waseca with the city of Waseca for services as it pertains to economic development, and specifically the services of Tino Wilson, the economic development manager at the city. And this affords the county some unique nimbleness as well in the world of EDA to contract on an as-needed basis. It's not a cost commitment per year. It's truly as needed, following a fee schedule. So if there are opportunities that the county deems that would be helpful for us to task Tina with to chase, whether they be grant initiatives, whether they be new and potential businesses moving into the community, on behalf of any of the communities within the county. This is by no means exclusive to the city of Waseca. They have just been willing to loan out some of their staff expertise at a billable rate, of course. But this would be a service that's available to any of our townships or municipalities as well too. And Tina is a very cogent grant writer and has a lot of experience at both the state and federal level for grant writing opportunities, and is quite well plugged in and connected with the user groups that are needed and helpful in that space. So this is something I am particularly excited about, and I think is a good step in the right direction for where I'd like to see the county go from an EDA perspective overall. So I would make that recommendation if the board is willing to add that to action item E. And there are some hard copies. I still have some more up here too. If people need those.
Thanks, Michael. Beth, anything to add? Okay. With that being said, I would look for a motion with the amended agenda. So, is there a second? There is. We have a motion by Commissioner Christopherson, a second by Commissioner Krause. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 4 is approval of the county board minutes. See, County Board of Commissioners meeting minutes, January 2nd of 2024. Looking for a motion to approve.
I would move those minutes.
Second? Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Walter, second by Commissioner Christopherson. Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 5 is the consent agenda. Approval of the bills, transfer between funds, vehicle expense transfer between funds, assigned vehicle fund, tobacco license for Janesville Tobacco, and the request for out-of-state travel. Can anyone make a motion on that?
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Krause, a second by Commissioner Walter. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. 6 is action items. A is contract number 812401, bridge number 7005, replacement on facade number 3. Morning, sir.
So, Bridge 7005 is timber beam standard on County Road 3 north of Waldorf, a couple of miles. It's structurally efficient and load restricted and eligible for funding assistance for its replacement. We prepared plans for a concrete beam span bridge, and those plans have been approved and advertised in accordance with law. We opened bids last Thursday. Commissioner Krause happened to be in my office for that bid opening. So you guys just click a button and watch it happen. We did have 6 bids, and Icon Constructors is the apparent low bidder with a bid price of $985,416.70, which is about 5.5% underneath the engineer's estimate. On contract award, MnDOT will prepare a grant agreement for the state grant amount, and I'll bring that back to you folks at each board meeting. Icon built the County Road 75 bridge in 2022. So they have done work for Waseca County in the recent past, and staff recommends award.
All right. Looking for a motion for that.
I would move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Krause, second by Commissioner Christopherson. Discussion.
Jim, you said, so Icon's gonna do the one that's farther to the north, right? And then M&K is gonna do the one
South.
south, 3 and 4.
That's already been.
Yeah. And they'll start on which one?
M&K, the South Bridge will start early spring, and this one will start July. And be completed kind of by November. That's how we're gonna set up.
And in the meantime, then you will be resurfacing.
33 will be the detour up, and that'll get resurfaced before this bridge starts, before we close it out for this bridge.
Some critical.
Timing, yes, so hopefully the weather is in our favor. I'll take another drought, I guess, but it's good for construction.
Right.
Not good for farming.
Any other questions?
Very good. Thanks for listening.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Resolution 2024-06 is to establish an absentee ballot board for 2024.
Good morning. More of the same, we established a resolution for a special election, so we're working under that for the February 13th election. But this Friday, we begin absentee voting for the PNP, presidential nomination primary. And I'm requesting that you pass a resolution that would cover all 4 elections this year. However many we have. We have a lot of elections, we want to cover all of them. So I would request to use people that sign up at the caucuses with the different parties, as well as staff to in this one.
All right. Thank you. Looking for a motion for this resolution.
I'll move it.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Commissioner Walter, second by Commissioner Christopherson. Any discussion?
Just to thank staff for their faithfulness in making sure that our elections are fair, free, and transparent.
Anyone else? All right.
Thanks, Tammy, for all your work.
Thank you.
With that being said, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Resolution 2024-07, Missouri River Watershed Collaboration Fiscal Agent Sub-Agreement. Good morning, Eric.
Morning, Commissioners. So here this morning, I have the fiscal agent sub-agreement before you. This is needed for the county to be eligible for reimbursement from the fiscal agent, once he gets CDBG, for the Missouri River watershed funding that's coming from the state. I guess I'll just add a little bit of an update. We submitted our grant request in November. Early in December, we got notification that our budget request was approved. Myself and the other county and SWCD staff have been working through finalizing the local cost share policy, which is kind of the final step that we need to attach prior to that money coming. We have a policy advisory committee meeting tomorrow where we will hopefully approve that local cost share policy. There's a couple changes that need to be made, or small tweaks that need to be made to the work plan before it's ready to be submitted. But we are on track to submit that before the end of the month. So tying back into this, in order for us to be able to receive reimbursement for staff time, and if we get any projects coming through, the Land and Water Resources Office or septic projects, well sealing projects, coming through the county, to be able to, get those contracts in and be paid for time and anything else. The county needs to sign on with this fiscal agent agreement, so that the SWCD can make payment, so.
Look for a motion.
I move it.
Is there a second?
There is.
Motion by Commissioner Walter, second by Commissioner Krause, open for discussion.
Yeah, so each county is having this agreement with SWC.
Yes.
I understand it, right? So that they can get, so whatever they do can be eligible for grant.
Yep, each county and each SWC. All the signing parties to the joint powers agreement have to send this through their board. Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, with that being said, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is a public hearing on the 2024 Waseca County fee schedule and approval of resolution 2024-08.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Annual topic brought to you this morning. This compiles a red line document of proposed changes that department heads have sent to me. And statutorily, we must hold a public hearing to set or designate county-based fees in any given year or changing that particular schedule. So it's not uncommon that changes are made on an annual basis. If for nothing else, adjusting for some of the increased pass-through costs and inflationary factors. Not a tremendous amount of changes on this document, but if you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you, but ultimately staff would request that a public hearing be open to see if there's any public comment on the proposed changes. And then upon closure of that, consider adoption of the resolution attached in your packet.
Thanks, Michael. We'll move into public hearing at 9:46 a.m. Is anyone here for public comment? Anyone here for public comment? Anyone for public comment? Seeing no one for public comment, I would look for a motion to move out of, to close the public hearing. So moved. And is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Christopherson, a second by Commissioner Krause. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. We are moved out of public hearing at 9:47. Now we will look for a motion for resolution 2024-08.
I would move that resolution.
And is there a second?
I was second that.
Motion by Commissioner Walter, second by Commissioner Krause. Is there any discussion?
That is to, that motion is to
To accept the amended fee
all
schedule.
amendments.
Amended fee schedule.
Okay, I just have a couple of questions, just for clarification, but we went through a lot of these with public health, correct? And she changed them to reflect what we got back from Medicaid.
Correct, yep. This is updates that reflect what we actually will receive from the state in terms of reimbursements.
Right, okay. And then this education, she has put the changes on the right-hand side and crossed out the red ones. So I'm assuming that this education lactation consultation fee is 120. See, that 50.29 is not crossed out. So, but according to the way it's set up, I'm thinking that,
You on the page about this?
I think you're good. Yeah, see that in the yellow, that there's two of them, infant. I'll move over. See, the others were crossed out and then added. So I'm assuming that 50.29 should be crossed out in the 120. It's fine.
You're right. Yes, I believe you're correct that this 5029 should be the 120 as well. The one above it was 120 already, that stayed the same, the car seat one. No, and she was modeling, yeah, so all three of these should be 120.
Okay. That's the way, according to the rest of them, I thought that must be, she just didn't get that crossed out.
That makes sense. Good catch.
That was the only question I had.
My motion would include that amendment.
Would include, okay.
Thank you for the catch.
Correct, okay. So with that correction, is there any other discussion on this one? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. E, under the action items, is going to be the joint powers agreement between the city of Waseca and Waseca County for the use of services of the economic development manager. Michael?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the consideration on this. The reason being the city plans to take some action on this evening as well too, on the very same agreement that you have in front of you. I can certainly go through some of the scope of services in more detail if you would like, but as I mentioned, it's fairly simple, high level, and the explanation of the logic or the rationale behind it before, but as I'll just simply restate that I think this is a great step in the right direction for overall economic development program that we need to see implemented for the county in the future. So there'll be instances such as this that are going to get us in that direction that we need to go and supplement the current EDA board that we have in helpful ways and more program specific ways as well. So only other thing I'd meant to reinforce is there is not an annual cost commitment to this by any means. It's simply a case by case basis as needed. And we would be billed according to each individual project as well.
Is there gonna be a resolution number of this, Michael?
No, the city did not have a specific resolution number, so I modeled theirs.
So it's gonna be the joint powers agreement. All right, looking for a motion for the joint powers agreement.
Could I ask something first, though? So I haven't been able to read through all this, but so they will bill us for work she does for the county.
Correct.
On certain projects. What if we get into a project that's really kind of dual purpose? You know, it's gonna be good for both of us. And there's gonna be them, you know, because everything that happens, even in the city, is good for the county.
For sure.
How will they bill us for that? Or is it is it gonna get to where there's an issue with, should this project be cost shared?
So it's a great question, and I asked a very similar question. And I don't anticipate any issue as it pertains to that. This is going to be instances where I pick up the phone or send an email basically saying, this is a county project. I don't have the capacity to be able to do it right now. Can you look into it? Can you, chase this grant program for this department, go through the details, get it filled out and send us a draft to submit. So I don't see it in any way, and then the conversations I had with Carl and Tina, which were multiple, to say that this is going to be a conflict for either of us. So no, they won't arbitrarily start billing us every time we have a conversation about any kind of joint agreement or program.
Okay.
And not to put any of you on the spot, if you have a desire to table until the next meeting, it won't adversely affect anything. But we have multiple individuals at all levels reviewing the language itself specifically. And it's going to be fairly minor in scope, at least on the onset. It's really just giving us an additional tool that we have to utilize to supplement expertise that we don't have in some of these things.
What are the board's wishes? Do we want a motion on this, or do you want to?
I mean,
Adjust it some more.
if everybody is
No, I don't know.
comfortable with it, I would move it. I think it could be very helpful to our EDA and projects that we're trying to get on the ground and give, that Michael just absolutely does not have time to deal with. And it'll give us another asset there, so, I think it's good. And if everybody's comfortable with the language, I'll move it.
It's second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Christopherson, a second by Commissioner Walters. Their discussion.
I just think it's a real good thing.
The actual funding for this and and I don't know, like you said, if it's gonna be by the hour or by the project or what happens. We have money in the EDA account.
We have money in the EDA, but I also would just leverage my own professional and technical services until we have an idea of what or how robust this will be in the future. In 2024, I know it's going to be fairly limited. I have a couple of things specifically in mind, but which will be immediately helpful. But until we have an idea of, we're not talking about a $50,000 commitment here. We're talking about more of a $5,000 commitment at most, so.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? All right, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Under administration is the administration update.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A couple of things to bring to the forefront of your minds. We're certainly getting into our legislative time of year, and if there are particular platform-esque items that are of your mind that you would like me to get compiled into a document to bring before our own legislative delegates, I'd be happy to do so. I do have most of your comments from last year. A lot has not changed from last year. You can just indicate that to me if you haven't already as well. But often we model a lot of what we see through the Association of Minnesota Counties at the state level and NACO at the federal level. So even if in your own review of those legislative platform priorities, if you have some immediate takeaways or ones you would like us to focus more so with our own voice, again, that's all helpful information for me. But I know a lot of you are involved in your own subcommittees and in conversations, so there may be some that have become more of import recently that you'd like us to focus on. We're working on getting those meetings set up with our own delegates for the end of February at the legislative conference for AMC, 21st and 22nd. So we'll certainly have a few minutes of time to get in front of those individuals and have more county-specific conversations with what some of those maybe wants, needs, and desires are, or could be. So good things to think about there. Also, keep me in mind for congressionally designated spending. We likely see those requests early to mid-March, and by the time we get to the request, we usually have about a week to fill them out. It's a very short window of opportunity. If there are key projects, strategic projects that we think would be smart to try to pursue, most of those, actually all of those aides at this point have reached out at least just to connect, and that's a placeholder for what we may need. So I'm happy to talk more with you on that as well. Up through the courthouse, if you haven't had the opportunity yet to see the nice work in the entryway. One of the projects is getting finished up there, remodeling, and I don't know what you call remodeling that is more age appropriate, but
Restoration.
restoration, that's a good word, it's called restoration. But the ceiling of that main entryway of the courthouse looks phenomenal. And break room's getting finished up, mostly it's finished up at the lower level, so we'll stop through there and see what Rich was able to craft and devise there, because it looks pretty awesome. So we'll get some lighting finished up in there within this next week or two, and we should be good to go with that project. Anything else you have for me?
Pretty quiet group. Might be frozen.
Okay.
Did you say at the beginning that you're gonna send out those legislative priorities?
I will, yes, ultimately I'll compile a document for you to take with in those meetings with legislators. If you have specific things you want on that, let me know, send me a note, and I'll make sure they're included.
Yeah, so if we could get kind of an update ahead of you compiling that, so I can refresh my memory on,
Sure.
look at them. I hate to come in at the 11th hour and say, I want this on here.
Probably look at that also and see who the lame ducks are at this point.
Well, you also have Representative Petersburg, who's retiring. So I was kind of thinking about that. Is the reality, or is there a lot to be expected of an individual that's going to be retiring? Probably not. That's either. So just kind of thinking through some of those exact same things. So we have some faces that we aren't yet as familiar with. So still building some of those relationships with Representative Bennett and Senator Dornick. Kind of those individuals.
Do you have good contacts for like Peggy Bennett? I tried emailing her, but I went through her website, so I don't know if it's a good contact. If it just went to her assistants or something,
Okay.
didn't get to her.
So she's one that I've actually just emailed directly. She's one of the few that I guess would prefer to just be emailed directly.
Okay.
But I do have the aide contact too, so I can.
Yeah, if I can get her direct email, I'd be great.
Sure. Can do that. And if nothing else from me directly, I think you got a handout of the human resources announcements. We met Michael Maloof this morning, IT, really happy to have some additional support in there, and we have Chris and Heather and Judy, and know that a big point of mental relief for Judy and Chris especially. So glad to have him in there. And a couple of resignations on there, Ernie and Leah as well. So we'll work on what the future of those job postings will be. The jail side and in the highway side technician. But if nothing else up there, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Michael. Rachel, do you have anything to add to anything you want? You're good? Okay. So we could do commissioner reports at 10:04. Mr. Jones?
I don't have a lot to add. The way the last 2 weeks have went, had a few things get postponed. Otherwise, just a lot. Township meeting on Tuesday the 9th of January. Otherwise, just a lot of conversation with staff over the last 2 weeks. And then, with that being said, I think tomorrow night is the annual township meeting. Yeah. So, mine's pretty short and sweet here, so.
Commissioner Walter?
We met on the 2nd, and I took some time off to vacation with family. To do an online meeting on the 8th of January for the Waseca County Collaborative for Families, which is in the midst of some change. Waseca's Superintendent Eric is doing a good job of working with partners to figure out how that collaborative might change and because I don't know if you all, well, I know Commissioner Christopherson knows and recalls that the way our collaborative in Waseca County works with Min Prairie is different than some of the others. And so we're trying to figure out what ought to happen from here. Because collaborative can get money from the state to do the work, at least some of the work it does. So the question will be whether that aligns with how the other collaboratives work with Min Prairie, or a little bit differently, but better. One way or another, better. Then continue to work with SHAC, had a meeting on the 11th, and met with Commissioner Christopherson, was there too with SWCD last Thursday. Larry Muff is their new chairperson. And of course, they're taking on the fiscal management of One Watershed, One Plan, the SOAR. So they've got a lot of things going on there. And to say that I went to a very nice event out at Farm America on Sunday night. They're starting to do some kind of cool farm to fork fundraiser kind of things. The one on Sunday night was particularly pointed toward women in agriculture, and the food was great. The speaker was the VP of Christensen Farms. Very interesting to listen to her talk about her journey. Oh, and one other thing that I want to bring to your mind is last week, can't remember what day it was, but the governor was in Blue Earth, Minnesota at BevCom. And BevCom is, of course, the local company that we're hoping to partner with, and that we have resolved to start to build a fiber network here in Waseca County if we can get border-to-border grant. And so it was very encouraging to see the governor visiting BevCom and having a lot of good things to say about that company, about the work they're doing, because hopefully that means they're going to get a grant that will help cover a fourth of our county with fiber. We'll find out in March. But I was super excited about that.
Thank you.
My turn? Yeah, it's kind of a shorter list again this week. On the 4th, after our meeting on the 2nd, on the 4th, we had South Country Health Alliance. And I was voted in as vice chair, so I'll be looking at chairing that next year. Organization, so but they're having a good year, projecting a good year again next year, or decent anyway. Just claims are down right now, so it's increased that margin real well. On the 10th, then we had some meetings canceled, so they'll be rescheduled. On the 11th, soil and water with Commissioner Malter. And then this afternoon is Min Prairie. And I was just gonna say that I will be meeting with Julie Johnson ahead of the meeting to put together some interviewing dates, and applications are being received now for the executive director. Right now, we've got Tara Rich as the interim. So that is moving forward. And I'd also say with Min Prairie that I just was going through the board packet, and that is preliminarily, we go by audits, you know, with this reserve amount and coming back to the counties, but we are under budget again this year by quite a bit. It was surprisingly more than I expected. So we could be looking at some more money coming back like we did this year. So still an expensive department, but it helps ease the pain a little bit. So.
There's a mechanism in place to bring that money back.
Right, to where that just doesn't continue to grow. It's a hard department, obviously, to project, because we don't know what claims are going to be, and how much service is going to be necessary. We're seeing quite a deduction in child and family. That seems to be where a lot of the savings is, and I'm not quite sure. That'll be a question this afternoon on why they think that is, or why it's trending.
I'm a little worried with this re-up on the insurance, as that isn't going real smooth for residents, whether 2 years from now, that's gonna come back to bite us because we couldn't get people re-enrolled the way we needed to. And they put off getting care that they needed. But
That is a concern, right? That
It is a
people aren't
concern.
as healthy right now as they have been. But that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Christopher. Tuesday the 2nd, I went to the Woodville Township meeting. And Monday night, the 8th, I had the Arts Council meeting at 6:30, and then went to the Fair Board meeting after that. Wednesday, the 10th at 6 PM was the Waseca County Historical Society. Last night at 6 PM was the Food Shelf, Waseca Area Neighborhood Service Center, which brings us to today. And then, like Commissioner Krause stated, we'll meet at the Woodville Town Hall at 7 PM on Wednesday night. So if you're able to attend, fabulous. That's what I have. Is there anything else to come before this board?
Move to adjourn.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Done at 10:13. Thank you.